And we will never accept these 15 items, these 15 American conditions.
Iran just said it would never accept the reported 15 US conditions. And honestly, part of the challenge here is that it is weirdly hard to find one clean, reliable list of what those conditions even are. There does not seem to be one official public document laying them all out. Most of the details have come out through scattered reporting. So in this video, I want to go through the reported points one by one, explain what they mean, and talk about why Iran says there is no way it can accept them. And once you hear the full list, the reaction from Tehran starts to make a lot more sense. The first point is a 30-day ceasefire. That sounds simple enough. Most people hear that and think, okay, why would anyone say no to that? But from Iran's point of view, the question is what comes after those 30 days? A temporary pause can be useful, but only if it leads somewhere real. If Iran thinks it is being asked to stop, give up leverage, and then face the same threats again a month later, that is not very attractive. So even the ceasefire part is not as straightforward as it sounds. The second point is dismantling Iran's existing nuclear capabilities. This is where things get really serious. Iran has invested years into building up this program, and inside the country, it has been tied very closely to sovereignty, pride, and independence. So when the US says dismantle your nuclear capability, Tehran hears a demand to give up something it sees as a major national asset. That is an incredibly hard sell for any Iranian government. The third point is a permanent commitment never to develop nuclear weapons. On its own, Iran could probably live with the wording because Iranian officials already say they do not want nuclear weapons. The problem is that this point comes packaged with a whole set of much bigger demands. So even something that might sound manageable in isolation becomes part of a broader deal that Iran sees as deeply one sided. The fourth point is no uranium enrichment inside Iran. This is one of the biggest obstacles in the whole plan. For Iran, enrichment is about more than the technical side of nuclear fuel. It is tied to the idea that Iran should be allowed to control its own nuclear program on its own territory. Tehran might negotiate over levels, stockpiles, or inspections, but being told to give up enrichment entirely hits one of the clearest red lines they have. The fifth point is handing over enriched uranium stockpiles to the IAEA. In a different negotiation, there might be some room here. Iran has shown in the past that it could discuss stockpiles under the right conditions, but in this plan, the request comes as part of a much bigger package where Iran is being asked to give up a lot all at once. That changes how the whole thing feels from Tehran's side. It starts to look like a forced rollback rather than a balanced compromise. The sixth point is dismantling Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordow. These are some of the most important nuclear sites in the country. So, this is a huge demand. You are talking about tearing down the core of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. No leadership in Tehran is going to agree to that easily, especially while under pressure. Domestically, it would look like they folded. The seventh point is full IAEA access, transparency, and oversight. This is another area where there could be some possible overlap in theory. Iran has accepted monitoring before, and tougher inspections are easier to imagine than some of the other points on this list. But context matters. When this comes in the middle of a package that already asks Iran to dismantle facilities, give up enrichment, and limit missiles, it feels less like routine oversight and more like outside control. That is where Iran is going to push back. The eighth point is abandoning its regional proxy strategy. This goes way beyond the nuclear file. Iran has built a lot of its regional power around allied groups and partner forces across the Middle East. From Tehran's perspective, those relationships are part of its deterrence. They give Iran reach, influence, and a way to pressure rivals without always acting directly. Giving that up would mean accepting a major strategic loss. The ninth point is stopping funding, directing, and arming regional proxy groups. This is basically the practical version of point 8. It means Iran would have to pull back from a lot of the networks it has relied on for years. That is not some small side concession. That would shrink Iran's influence in a major way, and Tehran is very unlikely to agree to that in a deal shaped like this. The 10th point is keeping the Strait of Hormuz open. Most people around the world would hear that and say, well, of course, it is a crucial shipping route and global energy markets depend on it. But from Iran's point of view, that strait is also one of the strongest pressure points it has. Tehran knows how valuable it is. So it is not going to rush to give up that leverage unless it feels it is getting something solid in return. The 11th point is limiting Iran's missile program in range and quantity. This is another massive problem for Tehran. Iran sees its missile force as a core part of its deterrent, especially because it cannot compete with US or Israeli conventional military power in the same way. So, when you ask Iran to accept strict missile limits on top of nuclear dismantling, you are asking it to give up another one of its most important tools. The 12th point is restricting future missile use to self defense. That might sound reasonable at first, but then you get to the obvious question: who decides what counts as self defense? Iran is going to say it already acts defensively in many cases. The US and Israel may see the same actions completely differently. So, from Tehran's side, this kind of language opens the door to outsiders judging and limiting its military choices later. The 13th point is full lifting of international sanctions. This is one of the few things Iran clearly wants. Sanctions relief matters a lot. It would help the economy, reduce pressure, and give Tehran something concrete to show for a deal. But when the price is this high, even major sanctions relief may not be enough. Iran would still be expected to give up huge parts of its nuclear program, missile program, and regional strategy all at once. The 14th point is U.S. support for Iran's civilian nuclear program, including Bushehr. This is supposed to be one of the sweeteners in the package. The idea seems to be give up the sensitive parts of the program, and you can still have civilian nuclear energy. But Tehran is not mainly focused on just having some access to nuclear power. It cares about control, independence, and the ability to manage its own program. So this offer may not sound nearly as attractive in Tehran as it does in Washington. And the 15th point is removing the snapback sanctions mechanism. Iran would definitely welcome that. Snapback has always been a major frustration because it creates the risk that sanctions can come back very quickly. But again, when you look at the package as a whole, this does not solve the bigger problem. Tehran would still be asked to make an enormous strategic retreat in several different areas at the same time. So when you put all 15 points together, you can see why Iran says it cannot accept them. Some parts of this might be negotiable in another context: stockpiles, inspections, sanctions relief, maybe even some phased nuclear limits. But that would require a very different kind of process with more balance, more trust, and more gradual steps. What Iran is looking at here is a package that hits its nuclear program, its missile program, its regional influence, and some of its biggest pressure points all in one shot. From Tehran's perspective, that is far too much to give up at once, and that is why this plan was always going to be incredibly hard for Iran to accept. Even if there are a few items in here it could discuss, the overall package asks for a level of rollback that no Iranian leadership is likely to agree to under this kind of pressure. So that is the real reason this reported 15-point plan ran into a wall. Iran does not just see it as a tough negotiation, it sees it as a demand to give away most of the leverage it has and trust that everything will work out afterward. And that is a gamble Tehran clearly is not willing to take.